Welcome to the Core Cultivation Podcast, where we break down the moves that matter most for your mental and physical well-being. I'm Marcia, your wellness architect with a mic, a mat, and a mission, and this is where coaching meets real life, so you can commit, own, rest and reflect, and engage your way to better health. Before we get started, please remember the information shared here is for educational purposes only and is not for formal medical or mental health advice. Always follow the guidance of your licensed healthcare provider. If you're in crisis, please dial 988 or go to your nearest emergency room. By listening, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your own mental and physical well-being, and you release Psycore Fitness, me, and any affiliates from any and all liability. Let's get started. Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. Always appreciate you coming along to join in the conversation. I've had the opportunity to spend some time recently with some law enforcement administrators, as well as some domestic violence advocates that are doing the thing. They are doing the hard work. These aren't the only ones, but also looking at those individuals who are in emergency rooms, first responders, emergency staff, crisis teams, those folks who are in it. You're the backbone, you're the buffer, you're the filter, you're the protector, the stabilizer. You are the ones that we call when something goes wrong. We're looking at you to fill in the gap and really provide physical safety, physical support, emotional safety, emotional support. I can't help but wonder, for all the safety and support that they provide to the rest of us, who's protecting them? Who's providing the emotional, physical safety, protection, and support for them? Who's looking after your mental well-being while you're looking after everybody else's? So that's what I want to get into today, and really just revisit the question I previously raised in an episode from last season. Who protects the protectors? Does your job really care about your mental well-being? So for those individuals who are in this frontline work, the emergency workers, law enforcement, police administrators, domestic violence parent advocates, all of these individuals just doing the hard work and creating a defense and a safety net for so many people in vulnerable and delicate times, who is providing that same type of support and emotional and physical safety and protection for you. There are a number of things that I want to unpack and look at, but first, just going to the idea of the organizational culture, and really just asking, does your job penalize or incentivize wellness? You think about it. Does your workplace reward your engagement in wellness activities, or are they quietly punishing it? And you can tell whether or not wellness is valued based on the responses and the behavior that you get from others and the organizational culture around you. So if you are maybe catching some side eyes from people, if you dare to take PTO for air quotes a mental health day, if you are feeling and seeing that there is more acceptance and more reinforcement, maybe more praise being given for individuals who tend to push through the stress, push through the sickness. But what if you are that individual who feels that you're going to get penalized for taking that time off? That if you do show up when you had time off, it's praised, it's celebrated. That, wow, you came, now that's dedication. And these are so embedded into the workplace culture and atmosphere that you can really feel that doing these things are the right thing. But you really have to consider, is what we've been doing really going to be appropriate and conducive for maintaining my peace, and supporting my overall physical and mental well being. If you are having to deal with increasingly heavier, higher, and larger caseloads and not getting an equal amount of time off, or your caseloads increase after you take that time off. Your organization is not necessarily trying to help you balance things out, but the work is going to keep going. Being expected to work through lunch breaks. We're going to do a working lunch. Well, okay, but then I don't get my break. Like, I needed a break from the work and I needed a break from you. I needed a break. Are you being expected to push through again, work through something as simple as a lunch break, a 20-minute break, whatever it is that you get? Are you being labeled as not being a team player if you're choosing to prioritize your health, your mental well being, as opposed to prioritizing the organization's objectives, goals, and bottom line? What is the reaction if you bring up the idea of burnout? Is it, hey, I mean, that's just how it is what it is, deal with it? That's what it looks like if your organization really is more about punishing and less likely to support you for engaging in wellness practices. If they are supporting wellness, incentivizing wellness, and this is something I will see in certain spaces where I go to do fitness classes where people are getting points, some type of reward for engaging in different wellness activities, all with the perspective of this is going to help you be better. This is going to reduce your stress level, and therefore it's going to make you a better employee and more effective at your job. If you are in an environment where your wellness practices and routines are supported, the PTO is not going to be used as a weapon against you. It's going to be encouraged that you use that time, that you use your PTO for your self care for whatever purposes you choose to use it for. Also, as opposed to working through your short breaks, you have breaks, real breaks built into the day, and not just for taking time to go eat your food, but maybe there's time dedicated and to be used specifically for self-care wellness practices. So you don't have to choose between, am I going to eat my lunch or am I going to go to this fitness class, or trying to squeeze both in? No, there isn't an either or, it's a both and, where you get both your breaks as well as those opportunities to have dedicated time to support your well-being. Also, what is the workload like? Is it reasonable? Is it acceptable? And of course, this might vary from person to person, but you have to take a look at what's the expectation when it comes to the workload for individuals. What is the impact of that workload on that individual's well being? Heavy workload or not, we're expected to get so much work done because there's an expectation about productivity. There are numbers that you're expected to meet. It always comes back to the numbers and how much you've done and how much you've accomplished. But are those numbers and are those expectations reasonable and fair for the individuals who are having to carry the weight of all of those numbers? And I'll just pause here. There's so much more than just a number. Whatever your role is, whatever your job is, and whatever numbers it is that you're having to track, there's so much more than what that number is. There's all the activities, the supportive administration, all of the different things that support and make that happen, that's not taken into consideration, not necessarily seen, but still requires bandwidth, still requires time, still requires energy. Are all of those additional activities being taken into consideration that make those numbers happen? Also, looking at training. Does your training add to your workload? And is there training with regard to taking care of yourself? Is there training around supporting your physical and mental well being? Is there training around wellness? Looking at mental health policies. Are there any mental health policies even in place? What does your organization say when it comes to mental health and mental wellness? Also, the same for physical health and physical wellness, not just physical safety and don't do this because you might get hurt on the job. When it comes to your improvement in physical health and wellness, what are the policies there? Do they actually encourage, support, and protect employees, or are they even present? How about stress management? Debriefing when you are in environments where you are having to do essentially crisis work, whether we're talking about physical crisis, emotional crisis, are there opportunities to debrief and decompress and allow all of that high energy, high intensity work processed through your mind, your body, and your heart? Because let's remember, folks who are doing these works are human, and so while they're doing the job, that doesn't mean that they're not impacted on a mental level, on a heart level, emotionally, and also physically. And so once they've absorbed the impact of whatever work it is that they have done, whatever situation that they have resolved, whoever they have provided protection for in that moment, what happens with them? Do they get space? Is there space created where they're allowed to debrief, decompress, and process through whatever it is that they have just experienced? If your job penalizes you for needing to take that opportunity to decompress and debrief, or needing to take time to rest and reflect, as I say, it's really not, it's not a wellness issue. That's a culture issue. That is an indicator that the culture is focused on and valuing other things. And if you remain in that culture for an extended amount of time, that culture is going to end up breaking you long before the actual workload. Because if you're set in a space where, yes, we've got a challenging job to do, and yes, we've got a heavy workload, but we've also got tools and resources in place to help us navigate that, then you're going to be more likely to balance through, recover in order to stay in the game. So I do want to pause here. Please don't hear me as pointing the finger to any one particular person or any one particular organization. Organizational culture develops and it ends up operating on its own. And also, that culture was probably in place way before you came along and became a part of that organization. My dad would often talk about the Marine Corps and just say, hey, the green machine is going to keep moving and it's operating on its own after a while. And so that applies to organizational culture. It gets to a place where it moves and it operates and it has its own being. To influence or change a culture, it takes a lot of work. This is where it could really be challenging, where you may want to change the way it operates, but it takes a great deal of work to change that particular culture. Which brings me to my next point. Is wellness part of the way your organization functions, or is it an add on brochure, flyer that they give you once a year at the wellness fair or wellness event? Or is it an ongoing experience that is regularly integrated into the way the organization functions and regularly integrated in different activities? So, the way that you can tell if it's an add on, the programs are optional. It's an optional thing whether or not you spend some time with a health coach and get an assessment. Maybe only certain groups, certain employees have access to certain types of wellness benefits, programs, or services. Maybe the activities are scheduled during the busiest times. So you have access to maybe go meet with a health coach, but it has to be done during this particular window, which is also when you're working on a big project or you've got meetings scheduled or you have to do it during your lunch, during another break or something like that, which leads to falling behind if you engage in such services because your workload is still there. It's not built into your workflow. Day in and day out, you're putting out fires, literally putting out fires, de escalating violent situations, trying to do the hard work, helping people who are in the midst of traumatic situations, and all of these things, but we're going to get a wellness activity once a quarter to help remind us to take care of ourselves. It's framed as extra, something that you can do, but you got to do it over there. You got to do it on your own time. When wellness is integrated into the culture, it's part of that onboarding process. You're letting people know as they are coming on that these are some of the things that you might end up experiencing from an emotional, physical well being perspective. These are the things that you need to put in place to take care of yourself. These are the resources that are available to you through our organization. These are the practices that we maintain and we encourage and we include and integrate within our culture. So you will notice every 2 weeks we do this. Every other month, we have this particular activity. We give you time for XYZ. It's included in staff meetings. Who knows? But it's part of the regular workflow. It is normalized. It is budgeted for. It's not an extra. It is scheduled, it is integrated, it's considered important and critical to the bottom line. There is no stigma in response to asking for or needing support. It's trauma informed and trauma sensitive, and recognizing that for this particular group of workers who are navigating crisis situations, de escalating crisis situations, constantly exposed to traumatic situations, there has to be trauma sensitive and trauma informed leadership to help support that mental well being. Wellness is embedded, it's part of the culture. It's not extra, it's not decorative, it's not just a poster. It is part of what that organization does. It can't just be a poster. It has to be part of what that organization does. The culture, the workload, the training, the policies, and the rhythm all has to include and reflect a perspective and value on wellness and well-being. So, a critical part of that organizational culture and supporting wellness goes to the leadership. So, on one hand, it's very difficult for individual employees to impact the culture of an organization. However, those in leadership have significant influence on the culture of that organization, which brings me to my next question. What is your leadership doing? Are they modeling wellness and well-being practices at your job? And if so, what does that look like for them? Are they saying it, but not really practicing it? What's the standard? What's being implemented behavior wise from the top? And how is that trickling down into the culture and reflected in practices by other employees? So when leadership is modeling wellness, they're taking PTO. And it's known that this person is taking time off. They are taking time off to maybe decompress, maybe rest and reset before getting back into the intensity of the work. They are setting boundaries and they are encouraging their staff to do so as well. They are transparent about how they're doing and what their mental well being is. They're not going to be glorifying burnout and overwork and overburdening yourselves. They recognize the toll and the risk of doing so. And so they're not going to glorify overdoing it and overworking yourself only to have someone burn out and be of no support, no help down the line. They are going to be flexible. They're going to be more open to adjusting workloads during crisis situations and during surges. They understand that they're going to have to make some adjustments, and they're going to make wellness accessible throughout the workday. Many individuals in these spaces are not doing a 9 to 5 or an 8-hour shift. We're talking 10, 12-hour shifts, and not only long shifts, but we're talking overnight shifts, third shifts that can really be detrimental and have a negative impact on those individuals' health long term, but they're doing that work. So when there is wellness built into the day and accessible for individuals throughout the workday, whatever that workday is, and especially when those work days are 10, 12-hour shifts back to back, multiple days on, that's going to help those individuals stay in the game. It's going to help their physical and mental well being so they can continue to keep providing that supportive, that protective care that we all want, that we all need in our times of crisis. When you are in an environment where it's not being demonstrated, when leadership is not modeling wellness, you're going to basically get the do as I say, not as I do. So, yeah, take some time off, but I'm here working all day, all night. And this might be the person considered to be admirable for carrying the weight and sacrificing. It's going to take a toll on that individual as well as the leader, because everybody in this situation, top to bottom, everyone is human, and everyone needs some time to take care of themselves. Everyone needs some time to recover. And so that individual is likely on a path to burnout as well. We're just looking at when, because they're not engaged in the practices. Maybe there's more hype and bragging about how much they haven't slept and how much they sacrificed in an effort to get the work done. This can be counterintuitive to so many because our culture has told us for so long that these are admirable qualities: to work hard, to grind out, to burn yourself out. And I get it, it's a mindset shift, but that's what I'm challenging you with. Are we normalizing chronic burnout? Are we just waiting for people to burn out? That it's just something that happens and we just kind of have a rolling situation where we fill in the gaps and we stand in when someone else is unable to do so or struggling a bit. It's good to be dedicated, but we want to stop treating wellness as weakness. It's a mindset shift. Because when we go back to the idea of normalizing chronic burnout, what does that say about your turnover? What does that say about that organization's turnover and churn rate? How many people are just coming in and going right back out that revolving door because you can't retain the staff that you need because everybody's burning out? And how much more is that costing you because you're constantly having to hire and rehire and train and retrain, as opposed to maintaining and supporting the staff that you do have and all that they bring from that extended experience and time with your organization, and investing in them and their well-being. So while organizational culture is difficult to change from an individual level, from leadership, there's more influence and more power because culture, it trickles down from the top. So if the leadership is not living and not practicing wellness, all the little extra classes, the trainings on wellness, the yoga sessions or the monthly wellness events, none of those things is going to get it. If you're not getting an active role model who is demonstrating on a regular basis what wellness can look like in that particular setting. And maybe the leadership doesn't know because they were brought up in the very same culture and reinforced for the same behavior. And maybe they have to begin taking steps and learning, how can I integrate? How can I begin to practice wellness even with all that I have to do? Because modeling and learning by observation can sometimes have a more significant impact than any brochure you hand out or any poster, wellness poster that is hanging on the break room wall. Which brings me to taking care of your employees. Whether you are a firefighter, whether you are working in the emergency room, law enforcement, domestic violence advocates, wherever you are, as frontline workers who are boots on the ground, dealing with the real situation, having to de escalate and having to provide support, protection, physical and or mental and emotional for everybody else. There's a toll that it takes on them. First, let's just talk about compassion fatigue. You can't help but become a bit desensitized when you are constantly exposed to traumatic events. It's your body's way of protecting you. So it's like you could become a bit numb to it. And so, on one hand, that makes sense, it's understandable, but for many folks in some of these different areas, it's their very compassion that's their gift. It's what drew them into the work that they're doing. It's what makes them good at what they do. They have that compassion, they care, they're wanting to support and care for other people. But there are two sides to every coin, and the emotional toll and tax on them becomes too much. So at some point, they end up becoming fatigued in order to protect themselves and their own being. Additionally, many people in these fields are supportive because maybe they've been there, they've done that. So they've been through some of these same experiences and are wanting to support and help carry other people through till they get to the other side, which is great. But that is also highlighting the fact that they may have had their own individual trauma that they've navigated their way through. But as they continue to work with people, as they continue to support other people, are they revisiting their own traumatic experiences while they're simultaneously helping other people through their traumatic experiences? What does that say about secondary trauma and vicarious trauma on top of their own individual traumatic experiences? There's a toll. There's a toll. If they have not experienced any traumatic experiences prior to their current role, they're likely going to, because they're exposed consistently to these different events. The emotional labor that comes around in the work that they do, having to be aware of their own feelings, but also having to do the emotional work for other people, helping other people navigate their own emotional experiences as they respond to whatever crisis, whatever event may have occurred. There's a lot of layers and a lot of work going on for these individuals. So they can get to a point where they are feeling overloaded because they've been doing it for so long and have been doing it for so many other people that they don't know how to let go. They don't feel that they have the luxury of opening up their emotions, falling apart, that they have to keep it together because everybody else is falling apart. Maybe not just in their work role, but they might also end up doing it so much there that they're also doing it in their personal lives. And we haven't really even talked about what these particular workers might be carrying individually in their personal lives on top of the work life. Now, if we zoom out a little bit and look at the current political environment, and this is not about saying that one side is right or one is wrong. If we just look at the bottom line, many of these organizations are experiencing funding limitations or being defunded. In many cases, these public services, safety services, crisis services are underfunded. And this isn't necessarily relative to the current political environment, although that does play a part. I would venture to say that even in the best of times, many places felt underfunded, that there just was not enough services, not enough equipment, not enough fill in the blank for whatever service that they were trying to provide, which then leaves the weight on the individual workers. We say that their work is essential. We believe that their work is valuable. We don't know what we would do without it. We want these things, emotional and physical safety and protection, but they're underfunded. They're undervalued. They're not fully appreciated. So these individuals end up getting mixed messages. You're super important, but we really don't have any money for you. You're super appreciated, but we're not going to be able to extend this grant to you again. And at the end of the day, the organizations and those frontline workers are the ones to feel it because the need doesn't change. The expectation that the service is there doesn't change. At the beginning of my podcast, I say dial 988. We expect that you should still be able to call the crisis line and get support, but we don't think about the fact that the crisis lines have been losing funding. So what does that say for those individuals taking those calls, working those 10, 12-hour shifts back to back? And there's still a great deal of stigma around needing and accessing mental health in the protective fields. And so if we still carry that stigma, we aren't giving permission for those individual workers to take care of themselves. How does that end up having a ripple effect into the work that they continue to do without taking care of themselves? And how does that have a ripple effect in their personal lives as well? You can't carry the weight of a community, a large caseload, of all these various crisis situations, of different departmental cultures. You can't carry that weight and not expect it to leave marks. You are a human, and your humanity is not optional. So, what should real workplace wellness look like? Well, I guess you can essentially say it's the opposite of everything I've said. But first and foremost, in these types of environments, there's a trauma informed culture. Let's just understand from the jump that if I'm working in law enforcement, if I'm working in crisis, that there is going to be trauma, period. And so if I am exposing my employees to trauma on a regular basis, then the organizational culture needs to be trauma sensitive. It needs to recognize what the impact of trauma is on individuals emotionally and physically, and all the different ways it can show up, and be sensitive to that. You need to build support services and care and break and recovery and debriefing opportunities into the workday and workflow. Because if trauma is coming regularly, constantly, then we need to have something on the other side to help decompress and release some of that energy. So whether it's micro breaks or starting your meetings with opportunities to breathe, it needs to be a part of the workday and the workflow, including some opportunities for movement and decompression. I am a broken record. Movement does so much. And if we recognize that trauma can stay in the body, then movement can help release some of that tension and some of that trauma. We want to also make sure that people have access to mental health services without being penalized, without stigma. If anything, maybe being reinforced for taking that time, encouraged and incentivized for taking care and supporting their mental health. If they're exposed to and experiencing trauma on a regular basis and we're not doing anything to support their mental health, what is that doing to that worker and employee? How is that employee showing up for their family, their friends, and other employees? It's taking a toll. So we want to have resources to support them without penalty, including and providing debriefing sessions for the individuals who are doing the work after those traumatic events, after those crisis events, while they are helping other people stay grounded, when they are decompressing, helping other people decompress and de escalate, they also need a place and a space to decompress and come down so they can reset. I know this is easier said than done, but is there a way to manage and adjust workload so that they're more reasonable? I know it's complicated, it involves various aspects, but have we even looked at or tried to consider ways to adjust the workload so that it is maybe more evenly distributed or done in such a way that we're not putting people on a path to burnout and you're not dealing with chronic burnout, turnover, and churn when it comes to your workforce? On one hand, maybe there's not enough funding for staff, but then there's also the idea maybe you can't keep staff because of the culture, because of the work environment. And maybe that's something that's more within your control, more within your influence, that if we change how we work, maybe we can retain people. And if we retain people, maybe we can even bring in more people to do the work because more people will be up for it and interested in the work. Also, leaders who are role modeling balance, engaged in self care practices, demonstrating wellness behaviors, not just talking about it, but they're doing it. And finally, offering protected time to engage in wellness practices, whether that is actual paid time off or time within the workday to engage in practices that are going to support the well being of your workers and not put them farther behind in the work that they're going to do. And all of this just brings me back to core work. So I'll tackle this from an individual and an organizational perspective. So, individually, if you are a crisis worker in one of these settings where you're constantly exposed to traumatic situations and just high intensity living, then you want to practice your core work by committing and recognizing how you are responding and feeling in these situations. The trauma is happening and it's impacting you whether you know it or not, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. You have to be honest with yourself. You want to own what you need to stay mentally and emotionally functional. You got to own it. You got to be honest with yourself about what it is that you need to stay in the game. Then taking that time to rest and reflect. You need that time to regulate your nervous system to literally come down from the traumatic events, from the crisis events that you're constantly exposed to. And then finally, engage, identifying and utilizing the right supports both inside your work environment and those external resources are going to help you continue to navigate continue to help you keep your balance and keep you moving forward. From an organizational perspective, if you happen to be in a leadership position, in a leadership role, how can you implement the core framework and do your core work on an organizational level? Well, it's the same thing, but from a bigger perspective. You've got to make a commitment to the well being of your organization. You got to commit to supporting the emotional and physical well being of your organization. Take ownership to a degree of the emotional well being of your employees and your workers. I know that that can sound like, well, that's not my responsibility. I get it, but you have to recognize that their emotional well being is a direct line to how effective they're going to be on the job and your bottom line. So you've got to take ownership to a degree of offering mental and physical well being services and practices that are built into the workflow. And by doing so, providing opportunities for them to rest and reflect, providing opportunities for them to decompress and de escalate, to debrief and come down off of that trauma, ensuring that that time for rest and reflection is available for your workers. And also from a leadership perspective, taking time to be intentional and thoughtful about providing rest and reflection for the organization. And I remember working with one military unit, and during my stint there, there was a wing down day, meaning that there were no scheduled activities. It was more about wellness, community, fellowship, the concept of being intentional and actually planning time, protected time for the organization to be still, time for the organization to rest, time for the organization to reflect. Now, can you do that when it comes to services that are considered to be 24/7, crisis services that are always supposed to be available? I get it. There might have to be some creative thinking around when, how you do that. But thinking about, is there a way that from an organizational level, there's an opportunity for resting and reflecting? And finally, of course, engaging the various resources to help you get there, finding the supports that can help your workers, your frontline workers, your employees do the work they need to do. What resources are there to help your organization create a new culture around wellness and begin to help integrate these things into your daily practices or regular routines? This is how you do your core work from an individual as well as organizational level. So, these are some things to consider when you're trying to figure out who protects the protectors. Does your job care about your mental well being? To my frontline workers, to the crisis workers, to law enforcement, to the admin professionals, to the domestic violence advocates, to the crisis line workers, fire, like all of you out there that I've named and haven't named, EMS, all of you all. You protect, you advocate, you respond, you de escalate, you support, and you absorb all of that energy, all of that work day in and day out. Thank you. But you are human also, and you also deserve to breathe. You deserve to rest. You deserve to have wellness embedded into your work and not added on top of all of the exhaustion and all of the stress. So, that said, I invite you to come participate in a Wellness Wednesday. Check out psychorefit.com. Check out the calendar. You should see a Wellness Wednesday. Happens once a month where you get multiple micro breaks throughout the day. You may also want to consider looking at core work, the Reset Intensive. This is an opportunity for individuals to really learn how to start prioritizing their well-being and putting into practice routines that are going to help them maintain their balance and boundaries so they can keep moving forward at their best and not just getting by. Also, if you happen to be in a leadership role and you are trying to determine how can you shift the culture, how can you make some changes in your organization that is going to support and promote regular well-being practices, then I encourage you to go to psychorefit.com and check out corporate wellness services that are available to help shift the work environment and bring calm that works at work. So, to all of my frontline workers and organizations, thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you so much for taking the time to join in and listen to the podcast. Keep doing your core work and take care of yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you next time around. All right, y'all. Take care.